You know, Patrick Mahomes had a lot of success at AT&T Stadium during his run with Texas Tech, and the Red Raiders hoping that luck still holds true through at least Saturday when number 4 Tech takes on number 11 BYU for the Big 12 Conference title game. The Raiders beat the Cougs 29-7 back in Week 11, but this is the game that matters because CFP implications are on the line. BYU, the first team out, Tech hoping for a first-round bye. It's all going down Saturday, noon Eastern from AT&T Stadium. For more on the big game, let's set the stage with Shehan Jeyarajah and Tom Fornelli joining us here, our college football experts, and they're going to set the table for us. Fellas, let's start with the Red Raiders. They've seen some historic success for their program, and they have since rewarded their head coach with a 7-year extension. Tom, what can you say about the job that Joey McGuire has done to earn that extension in Lubbock?
I mean, I think that if you look at the situation going in, Texas Tech spent a lot of money on their roster putting it together this year, and it was like, all right, just go out there and actually make sure this is money well spent. And Joey McGuire has done that. He has taken this influx of talent. He has built a team that has been one of the best teams in the country. So he's done absolutely every single thing that you can ask of him since they brought him in to be the head coach in Lubbock. And I think that now that he's got them on the precipice of a Big 12 title, he's got them on the precipice of a possible first-round bye in the college football playoff, not just an entry into the college football playoff. To lock him up to this extension makes a lot of sense. And I think even better if you're Texas Tech, the numbers that we're hearing, if that's what you're getting him for, $7 million a year in this current climate with what coaches are getting, that's a fantastic deal on Texas Tech's end, in that you're not really overspending on a coach like we've seen other schools do. Like, I believe he'd be the 3rd or 4th highest paid coach in the Big 12 right now. So I think when you look at the success, you look at what he's gotten, what he's done, and what the price they're getting him it for, this is a win-win situation for everybody involved.
Both of these teams are looking for their first Big 12 conference championship, I should say, but Texas Tech looking for their first outright win since winning the Border Conference in 1955. I don't even know what that is, full disclosure. Tom, you mentioned the massive spending that Texas Tech has done to this point. Of course, it was Shehan, your story, that sort of set the tone for 2025 when we talked about all of that money that the roster cost in Lubbock. Bring us up to speed here. It kind of sounds like the money paid off for Texas Tech.
100%. And there's obviously going to be a lot of conversation about the pure dollars that was spent. But I think that for me, it's really about how they spent that money and how they built that roster, right? They invested heavily in the trenches, the defensive line above all. Look at this Texas Tech team and the success that they've had this year. It's really been that unit. Of course, you have a player like David Bailey who's competing for All-America selection. You bring in Lee Hunter, Skylar Gill-Howard, who's been out for part of the season. Like, these are big-time players. And same with the offensive line. You've got multiple players on that offensive line who also were brought in via the transfer portal. They wanted to add some big-time depth. They wanted to add some difference makers in the trenches, and they've been able to do it. There are a lot of teams that spent heavily in the transfer portal over this offseason, and several of them have not performed to the highest level. And in the case of the only class to finish ahead of them, LSU, they fired their head coach. So while obviously we're going to talk a lot about the pure monetary investment, I think they did a really good job of evaluating their roster and figuring out where exactly do we need to grow.
Shehan, I want to stay there for just a minute and talk about the quarterback in Behren Morton. He's one of 3 undefeated quarterbacks with 10 or more wins in FBS this season. He's done some incredible stuff, but he's kind of different than what you kind of just explained, right? He's been at Texas Tech for 5 years, and that's not to say that he's not getting his share of NIL money, but what can you say about the job he has done kind of growing up through this weird college football transition?
Well, it's interesting. I've spoken to Joey McGuire before, and he told me there are 6 kids on the roster from West Texas that really are the core of what this team is. Obviously, Jacob Rodriguez on defense at linebacker is one of them, but Behren Morton is very much one of those players. He grew up in Lubbock. He played at Eastland High School in West Texas. He's been somebody, like you mentioned, who's been on campus for 5 years, started multiple years in this program. And frankly, there were people who kind of questioned, why didn't they bring in some help at the quarterback position with how much they put together? Well, they felt like if they had the opportunity to build around him, that this offense could be really, really good. And he's still He's completing nearly 68% of his passes, the best mark in the Big 12. He's been one of the most productive players in college football, and I think that he's been a real difference maker for this team. Now, I will say as well, he's been dealing with some lower leg issues in his fibula, and he has not been as mobile in the second half of the year as he was in the first half. That's something that Texas Tech has needed to compensate for, and that's something that I think could play a role in this game on Saturday.
It'll give definitely Kalani Sitaki something to think about, especially when you think about him sticking around for a little bit longer. That was the big news out of the coaching carousel yesterday, that Sitaki is not going to Penn State. He's going to stay with BYU, Tom. And I love that I get to ask you this question because I know that you love Petty. The CEO of Crumble Cookies leaning into that Petty environment here. They sent cookies to Penn State to guess celebrate Sitaki sticking around here. And there's the tweet. In all seriousness, what do you make of the pettiness? What do you make of Sitaki staying at BYU? Why was it important for the Cougars to keep him in Provo?
To take the pettiness to the next level, I don't know if you saw it, but at signing day today for their ceremonies at Virginia Tech, where James Franklin is now the head coach, they had Crumble Cookies there, too. So that was kind of a little bit of a message from James Franklin back to Penn State. And I think that, honestly, this is just kind of a reflection of how this stuff happens in the sport now, where now that schools are just allowed to really go out there and just openly pay players and openly pay for things, you're going to see more of this. And Penn State's been on the wrong end of it a few times. Curt Cignetti spurned them to stay at Indiana, and now Kalani Sitaki, one of the better coaches in the country, is spurning Penn State to stay at BYU. And I think, honestly, it's the best choice for Sitaki. I think that, besides financially, he's just a perfect fit from a culture standpoint for that program. And this is a program that he has had a huge part in building and getting them to this point where they are a win over Texas Tech away from being in the college football playoff. So I do think that it makes sense for schools to be coming after Sitaki. But like Texas Tech, we've spent so much time talking about the money they've been able to spend. BYU's not poor. BYU has plenty of money of its own that it can spend on its roster and on its coaches, and we are seeing BYU flex that financial muscle here, making sure that their coach stays home.
I will never look at Crumble Cookies the same ever again. Let's go to the other side of this matchup, though, in BYU. 11-1 this season, and they are led by a freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier. And I remember the whole Jake Reslov situation. He transferred, and we kind of thought the world was ending, and then there's this true freshman that steps up, and he is now one of 4 true freshman quarterbacks since 2010 with 11 or more wins as a starter. The rest of the names include Jalen Hurts, Jake Fromm, Trevor Lawrence. He likes to rush the ball as well. He's really great at getting in the end zone with his legs. Shehan, how has Bear really exceeded expectations for BYU?
Well, I got a chance to speak to Bear and wrote a story about him just about a month ago. And the funny thing about Bear Bachmeier is that he was kind of built for this moment. He's actually the 4th of 5 siblings. His older brothers both played college football. Hank Bachmeier, people might remember from Boise State and Wake Forest and Louisiana Tech. His brother Tiger as well is a player on BYU's roster. And that competition was there from the time that he was young. They really pushed him. He never backed down. And so when he came up to the college level, he had the guidance of both of his older brothers to be ready for this moment. And I think that he stepped in because, for people who don't know, he came in as a transfer from Stanford during the spring portal window. So he didn't arrive on campus until this summer, but they've come up with a great plan to get him up to speed. They I think, did a really good job of slowly building up the playbook so that week 1 to week 12, he's grown so much as a player. He now has the full playbook at his disposal. And also, I mean, he's just a tough kid. He's somebody who's 220, 230. He loves to run through people. He wears number 47 because he loves to keep that linebacker type physicality to his style of play. So he's just somebody who's able to really get after it, and he's not going to be scared of the moment.
I was going to make a joke about a quarterback wearing number 47, but then you explained it real nicely, and so now I feel a little bad. So we'll leave it there. In terms of winning the game, fellas, the odds say that the Big 12, or BYU rather, needs to win the Big 12 championship in order to be in the CFP. We know that they are the first team out after the latest college football rankings. Tom, sort of advocate for both here. Do you think BYU deserves to be in if they lose? Should they be a lock if they win? How are you evaluating this situation?
Well, I think if you're Texas Tech, you're in no matter what happens in this game. The only question for Texas Tech is, are you getting a bye or will you be hosting a first-round playoff game? Because if you lose to BYU, you've already beat BYU, so you've beaten everybody on your schedule. They are in. I think it's a very clear-cut situation, though. I think based on what the committee has told us all year, and I don't mean in their question or answering questions after they put out the rankings, I mean the actual rankings. If BYU wins, they get the automatic bid and Notre Dame falls out of the playoff. If BYU loses, Notre Dame's going in the college football playoff. I think it is that cut and dry based on what the committee has done week in and week out. Whether or not it's fair, I don't know. I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I think you could look at BYU's resume and say they've got 2 losses and they're both to the same team. Meanwhile, Notre Dame played 2 teams and they lost to different ones, and one of them was at home by 1 point. So I think if you look at their resumes, you want to pick them apart and everything, they're probably overall going to be similar. Clearly, the committee values Notre Dame. They think they are a better football team than BYU. They think they're a better football team than Miami. Whatever they're using to determine that is what they're using to determine it. So I do think it's very, very clear cut. BYU wins, it's in. If it loses, it's not.
We should put you on the committee, Tom. I wish it was just that simple, cut and dry there. Let's get to a winner here, Shehan. I mentioned it earlier. Both teams looking for their first ever Big 12 title. Who do you think gets it?
This is going to be a huge game, a huge moment for both these programs. Like you said, I mean, this is not one of those title games where anybody's going to be, thinking about resting anybody or not giving their all or keeping stuff off film. This is one where both teams desperately want to win. You mentioned Texas Tech has not won an outright conference title since 1955, and I think that changes on Saturday. This Texas Tech team is just playing at such a high level right now on both sides of the ball. You look at the stats, they're number 1 in the Big 12 in scoring offense, scoring defense, total defense. It doesn't get a whole lot more clear cut than that. Now, I think that BYU is going to play them a lot closer. I think they're going to have a better game plan. I expect them to take more chances than what we saw when they played on the road in Lubbock. But this is just a Texas Tech team that feels like a team of destiny right now in the Big 12. I think that they ultimately get it done. I think they move to 12-1. Looking
for that clean sweep over BYU. Meanwhile, Tom, the specs here also favor Texas Tech. They're a 12.5-point favorite in this one. 49 and a hook is what the point total is set out here. What's your best bet?
Yeah, I like the under looking at this matchup. We saw the first game. There were only 36 points scored in it. It was a 29-7 final. And I'm with Shehan. I don't see things being that much different in the rematch because this is a Texas Tech team where Ohio State is probably the best team defense in the country. Texas Tech is not that far behind Ohio State when you start looking at the stats, particularly against the run. And BYU is an offense that really relies on its rushing attack to move the ball consistently. And Texas Tech absolutely took that away from them in the first meeting. I expect Texas Tech to do the same. But on the flip side, if not for BYU turnovers and short fields, you can argue BYU's defense did a pretty dang good job of slowing down the Texas Tech offense in the first meeting. So I just don't see this one being high scoring either way. I'm going to stay away from the spread and just take the under.
Take the under and take Texas Tech if you believe in our guys. Fellas, appreciate the time and the insight. Enjoy all of the conference football this week. And for those of you at home who still need to kind of catch up with everything that's going on this weekend, tap into the Cover 3 podcast. The fellas reacting to the latest CFP rankings. Chip, Danny, Tom, and Bud take you through everything from National Signing Day, which is today, all the way through the national championship.